Welcome everyone to another video of answer writing program discussion by Vajiram and Ravi. In this video, we are going to see GS1. Yes, in December month, we are going to tackle GS1 where we are going to see questions from culture, modern history, society and geography. So we can understand the entirety of how we need to prepare for GS1. For GS1 art and culture, Indian culture, we are going to see in this video salient aspects of art forms, literature and architecture from ancient to modern times. We are going to see two questions on the same and one question from current affairs. Before diving deep into the mains writing part, let us understand how we need to strategize our GS1 preparation for art and culture. We do know that art and architecture and literature, the entire syllabus is humongous. So we have to be very strategic with respect to planning and revising the entire syllabus. If you see the PYQs, you will understand that UPSC in CSE hardly repeats any theme. You will see that some topics such as Gandhara, art, they have been repeated, but most of the themes are not repeated. So you have to figure out certain kind of patterns, and from those patterns you have to see what kind of topics are missing and then thus prepare for the same and be ready for your mains answer writing program. For example, let's talk about literature. In literature, we have seen Sangam literature, which is Tamil. We have seen Persian literature. We have Bhakti movement and Sufi movement literature. So if you see, there is certain linguistic division of literature, so that you can understand for next round there is possibility of Sanskrit literature, etc. So you have to prepare your entire art and architecture and culture syllabus in that way. So let us start with today's session. Let's see the overview of the three questions. The very first question is with respect to architecture. We are going to see a question on rock cut architecture. We are going to see the evolution of rock cut architecture in ancient India. The next question is about the contribution of Greco-Romans and Chinese travelers to understand the social history of India. We have seen certain questions where literature helps with respect to understand the societal aspect of the ancient India or the past. So that question, through this question, we will understand how we can take certain kind of literature forms and understand different aspect of the society. And the third question is current affair based question, where we have recently witnessed the demand of special category status by Bihar. Now we are going to see the reasons for certain kind of demand like special category status and the concerns with respect to accordance or the allocation of special category status. So let us start with the very first question. In the first question, let's read the question. Trace the evolution of rock cut architecture in ancient India with suitable example. Now, if you break the question, you will understand the basic demand is evolution of rock cut architecture. And we have to substantiate the entire process, the entire evolution with lots of example to understand and to give proper justification for the demand. So, in the intro, you can define rock cut architecture, where rock cut architecture refers to making sure you carve out the natural rock into certain kind of structural elements such as caves, temples, monuments, sculptures, etc. So that is something you can define over here. In the body, you will talk about the evolution of the rock cut architecture. You can talk about different timelines, provide different examples, and that will be all for the body. And in the conclusion, you have the opportunity to talk about the conservation of the architecture, the importance of India's unique heritage. Also, you can talk about certain government initiatives to safeguard the Indian civilization, the heritage. So let's start with the introduction. As I said, in the introduction, you can define what is rock cut architecture, where a natural rock structure is transformed into structural elements such as caves, temples, monuments and sculptures. So that is something you will write in the introduction over here. Rock transformed into structure element like caves, temples, monuments and sculptures. So this is something you can introduce in the beginning. You can talk about that India, its a civilization, has witnessed unique evolution of rock cut architecture, which can be then catered in the body aspect, where you can give the heading evolution of rock cut architecture in ancient India. Now you can provide the evolution through timelines so that you can definitely give certain proof points. The very first you can talk about is early Buddhist phase, which is 3rd century BC to 1st century CE. Over here, we have seen the structure was simple and with basic features. They had pillared veranda with small shrine room. You can cite examples such as Barabar caves. You can see over here that how it is simple in form. There are verandas and small shrine room, and you can also understand that how they were carved out of primitive tools. This is Nagarjuni cave in Bihar. So you can understand that there is lack of complex sculpting as well as any kind of carvings. So you can understand that the very first early phase was basically simple with basic features. Then coming to the second, which is Hinayan Buddhist phase, which goes from 1st century BCE to the 1st century CE again. Over here we have witnessed certain larger structures with elaborate caves. There are halls, there are viharas, and there are monasteries. And there is lots and lots of emphasis on Buddha's depiction and Buddhist motifs. You can talk about Karla caves. You can see there are certain kind of pillars. So basically this is the advanced stage from what we have seen in the previous early Buddhist phase. So we have Karla caves over here. We have Ajanta caves as well. You can see there's Buddha's depiction over here. There are Buddhist motifs. So thus there is certain kind of evolution from the early phase. The next phase is Mahayan Buddhist phase, which goes on from 2nd century Common Era to the 6th century Common Era, where we have seen elaborate sculptures and decoration and depiction of scenes from Buddha's life. You can talk about Ellora caves, which is a magnificent rock cut architecture where the entire temple is carved out of the rock formation. You can also talk about the Bhaja caves. So over here we have witnessed that the complexity of the sculptures and decoration is increasing, as well as there is depiction of Buddha's life, as in now we can understand the same through sculptures and paintings that how the life of Buddha is there. So this is a kind of evolution of the rock cut architecture. The fourth, we have witnessed that apart from Buddhist, Brahminical and Jain phase and sculptures were also visible. Hindu and Jain architecture influence, temples carved out of sandstone cliff, and elaborate carvings and sculptures. The examples we have is Elephanta cave, where we have seen certain Hindu architectural forms, and also over here at Badamani caves in Karnataka, we have seen that how there are intricate designs that are inculcated in the architectural form. So this is the fourth point, and in the fifth point you can talk about the rock cut architectures by Pallava, which is from 7th century CE to 9th century CE. Now we are specifically limited to the ancient India, so this would be the final point over here. You can talk about how Pallavas pioneered the rock cut temple and relief sculptures. Example, Shore temple at Mahabalipuram and Ganga coming from earth, that is Arjuna's penance. Now over here you can understand from basic structures that we witnessed in the early phase where the structure was simple. Now you can see there's lots of design, there's lots of story depiction in the rock cut architectural form. Even the temples that are carved out of the rock have unique design. So this is something you can write in the evolution of rock cut architecture in ancient India. In the conclusion, you have the opportunity to either talk about the uniqueness of Indian architecture, that how Indian architecture not only comprises of basic rock cut architectural but advanced rock cut architecture as well as other forms of architecture. You can also talk about how India is home to so many precious architectural heritage sites, and thus for the same the conservation should be at the center for government as well as for the public. You can also talk about how there is also a need for resonance with Vikas Bhi, Virasat Bhi, Ek Bharat, Shresht Bharat. You can also cite different government initiatives where other civilizational sites and culture is at the core with respect to conservation, like Prasad, where pilgrimage, rejuvenation and spiritual augmentation drive is safeguarding India's ancient civilization heritage, where we have Hriday, Heritage City Development and Augmentation Yojana, where development of 12 heritage site is at the core. And you can also talk about how India is pushing to ensure there are more number of heritage sites in the World Heritage Site database. So this is something for question number 1. Let's see the model answer and understand how can we inculcate the same in our answer writing practice. Firstly, in the introduction, you can define the rock cut architecture. You can talk about India's rock cut architecture and how it went through an evolutionary phases. You can talk about the different phases with examples, and in the conclusion you can talk about how the rocket architecture evolution took place, the significance of it, the uniqueness of India's architecture, and need for conservation. So that's it for question number 1. Let's move to question number 2. Let's read the question number 2 together. Assess the contribution of Greco-Romans and Chinese travelers' accounts in reconstructing the social history of India. If you break down the question, you will understand that we have to cater the demand where contribution of Greco-Romans, which is the first demand, and Chinese traveler, which is the second demand, with respect to constructing the social history of India. Now we understood that many travelers from foreign, they travel to India for variety of reasons. You can talk about the same in introduction, that what exactly attracted that same. We can talk about how geography was a certain unique aspect which attracted the traveler. You can talk about how religious practices such as Buddhism at that time and other religious practices, they also attracted the travelers. You can talk about unique cultural practices with respect to India, as well as learning centers. So this is something you can talk about in the introduction, that what exactly attracted those travelers. In the body, the very first heading is going to be the contribution of Greco-Romans for understanding the social history of India. The second heading would be the Chinese travelers' account with respect to understanding the social history of India. And in the conclusion, we will talk about the significance of their contribution with respect to understanding the Indian society in holistic way, the ancient Indian society. So let's start with the introduction. As I mentioned, you can briefly talk about what attracted the Greco-Romans and Chinese travelers to India. The first was geography, the second was religion, the third was culture, and fourth was learning centers. And because of that, they traveled over here, they understood the society, and they took back their learnings to their society, and they wrote certain kind of literature through which we understood that what were their learnings with respect to Indian society. So in the body, the very first heading is going to be the Greco-Roman travelers' account, highlighting social conditions of India. You can talk about Megasthenes, his notable work Indica. Over here he observed that there is complex hierarchy of caste in Indian society. So it basically, through his book Indica, he was able to pass on the information such as that the society was fragmented in hierarchies. Second is by Strabo in his work Geographica. He noted that there were slaves owned by both wealthy and poor serving various roles. Again, over here we are able to see certain social stratification and certain division of labor of Indian society. Third is Plutarch. In his notable work Parallel Lives, he was able to provide insights with respect to the wealth and power of Indian king, role of women, and use of animal welfare. So you can understand that how Plutarch, through his notable work in Parallel Lives, was able to see Indian society with respect to the power, as in the princely people, the role of gender, women, as well as with respect to the wildlife and animal, as in use of elephants in welfare. So he gave a pretty much holistic picture through considering different social indicators. The next is Meander. In his work Miland Panno, he recorded information about Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism. Over here we can understand that how the traveler was able to see different religious practices in the Indian society, and thus gave us insight about the diversity of religion of Indian society. The next is Dimachos. Dimachos, in his contribution, was basically about description of Hindu deities, Buddhist and Jain monasteries, and religious practices. So he went further, not just understanding the different religions, also their practices and how there were different religious ways to perceive the life in Indian society. So that was something for the heading 1 of Greco-Roman travelers account. Let us see the heading 2 of the body, which is going to be the Chinese travelers account, highlighting the social conditions of Indian society. First, you can talk about Fahian. In his work Record of Buddhist Kingdom, he highlighted the dominance of Hinduism and flourishing of Buddhism and Jainism during Gupta period. So basically, he provided the picture of society in Gupta period from the religion's perspective. The next is Yuan Sang. In his book The Record of Tangs of Western Region, he observed that there is certain allocation of status of women during Harsha period and with respect to Pallava. So he basically witnessed the society from the gender perspective. Next is Einsing. In his work, A Record of Buddhist Religion Sent Home from Southern Sea, he noted that it is a place of great learning with many universities and many centers of knowledge. So through those three Chinese travelers, we are able to understand that Indian society had certain kind of religious practices, had certain kind of role allocation with respect to gender, as well as certain degree of spread of education through learning centers. So that is there for body, where we have deciphered different travelers, their work and their learnings. Now in the conclusion, which we can talk about the importance of travel accounts of understanding the history, you can conclude the answer by saying that how travelers provide a unique perspective to study the Indian society, where their view is not adulterated with the contemporary times of that period. Thus, travel accounts of travelers gives us a very unique idea about the social history of India. So that is something you can write in the conclusion. Let us see the model answer and understand how can we inculcate the same in our answer writing practice. Firstly, in the introduction, you can talk about what attracted those travelers to the Indian subcontinent and how exactly they provided insight with respect to the cultural and social practices of Indian society. Then in the body, in the heading 1, you talk about the Greco-Roman travelers, highlighting the social conditions. You list down all the travelers, their notable work and their contribution. Then for the Chinese, you do the same thing. You list down all the travelers, the notable work and the contribution. And in the conclusion, you talk about the importance of the perspective of the travelers and how it provided valuable historical records of the Indian society and the culture. Now, whenever you see art and culture questions, try to break down the same so that you can get exactly the part where you need to cater the demand. That is something you have to practice. You need to see all the PYQs to ensure that you know the themes which have been already been given for the UPSC main civil services examination, then understand the gaps as I mentioned in the very beginning, and then move on with respect to making your synopsis. So that is therefore question number 1 and 2. Now let us see question number 3, which is current affair based question. Let's read the question together. States frequently demand special category status, seeking unique fiscal and developmental consideration from central government. In light of the recent demand by Bihar cabinet, mention the reasons for such demands and highlight the concerns related to special category status. Now, we have seen recently that how Bihar government, they passed the resolution seeking special category status to the state. There is certain kind of demand, special category status. Now they are demanding that kind of status because recently they conducted a caste census where they figured it out that 1/3 of Bihar is multidimensionally poor. Now because of that kind of relative deprivation, Bihar is demanding special status so that they can ensure that there is an element of equity for the entire setup. Whenever we see this kind of terms, special category status, special status, they both are unique, but you have to understand that there is a unique form of federalism, which is the core demand over here, asymmetric federalism. India practices a unique form of federalism, and because of that, not all the states are treated equally. They are treated in the way through which they can ensure equity for all the states. Now let us understand special category status. The special category status is extra constitutional term which was evolved by 5th Finance Commission in 1969. And the first few states were Jammu and Kashmir, Assam and Nagaland in 1969, they were given the status. There were certain kind of parameters based on Gadgil formula through which the special category status was given, such as hilly terrain, low population density, strategic location with borders in neighboring states, countries, economic and infrastructure backwardness, and non-viable nature of state finances. Now this setup was going on. 14th Finance Commission, which came in picture after the Planning Commission was dissolved. 14th Finance Commission has done away with the special category status except Northeast region and few hilly region in Telangana. So the rationale behind the same was for the fact that Finance Commission has created a new method through which instead of 32%, which was the previous allocation, 41% is going to the state from the entire pool. And also centrally sponsored scheme, which was previously going on 60:40 ratio, 60 center, 40 state, or 80:20, which now has been catered to 90 and 10. So because of certain kind of arrangement, Finance Commission, the 14th Finance Commission, done away with the special category status. Now, if we see the question, we have to talk about the reasons for such demand and also highlight the concerns related to special category status. This is something which we are going to delve in the body, where the first heading would be the reasons for such demand and the second heading would be the concerns. And in the conclusion, we will talk about certain way aheads, right? So in the introduction, you can talk about the recent news, you can talk about how the special category status was done away by the 14th Finance Commission, and then let's go to the body. In the heading 1, you can talk about the reasons for the demand of special category status. The very first is economic disparities. We have seen certain regions, certain states, they face certain kind of extreme level of relative deprivation. Just for example, Bihar, we have witnessed that 1/3 of the population of the state is going through multi-dimensional poverty. And because of that kind of economic disparity, states demand extra provisions like fiscal provisions to ensure they cater to the demand of the poor people. Next is geographical challenges. Now we have seen certain hilly regions in northeast, they face certain kind of logistical challenges because of the geography, and for the same they need to have certain kind of special provisions to ensure the holistic development of that region is catered. The third is resource constraint. Not all the states have the privilege of natural resources or human resources or etc. And because of that kind of constraint, they definitely need special status through which they can get special attention from the center through extra division of the fund, and those funds can be utilized to build the capacity of the population as well as to build the infrastructure of that region. The fourth is social indicators. Just as we seen the level of poverty in Bihar, we have seen that certain special category status states, they have certain kind of social indicator where we have witnessed a higher degree of relative deprivation as well as lack of basic needs. And because of those kind of social indicators, the states definitely need to cater the demand of the population through special category status. So those are the reasons for the demand of special category status. You can list them in the first part of the body. In the second heading, you can talk about that special category status. There are certain kind of challenges with respect to the accordance of special category status. The very first is financial implication. As we understand that through this kind of status, the center will be providing more funds to the state, and because of that there is a possibility that they might breach the FRBM levels that are in the act, and because of that there might be certain fiscal implication. The next is inequitable distribution. Now, as we have seen that special category status is part of asymmetric federalism, and when we talk about asymmetric federalism, we are talking about asymmetry in distribution of the resources, and that kind of asymmetry can instigate a lot of conflict with other states where they can perceive this kind of distribution as inequitable distribution. So that is the third part. The second part, the third part is dependency and accountability. In past, we have seen that there are several states who have been accorded special category status, but despite that kind of accordance, they are not able to uplift themselves because of the dependency and issues with respect to accountability. The last is political manipulation. We have seen that certain states, they have demanded special category status just to benefit out of it through via political reasons, and because of that such kind of demand, they do not get the kind of realization because they have the nature of the demand is political in a way. So because of that kind of political manipulation, special category status also have certain kind of concerns. So this is something you're going to write in the body part. We have seen the heading 1 with respect to the reasons and body heading 2 with respect to the concerns. Now let us go to the conclusion where you have the opportunity to talk about the way ahead, where you can talk about that instead of that kind of asymmetrical federalism, we can create certain kind of structure where devolution of fund is done in a transparent and standardized framework, where periodic reassessment is there to ensure that there is proper justification of the development of the fund. The next is you can leverage the interstate cooperation to ensure that different states can understand the asymmetry in development and help each other. Over here we are talking about cooperative federalism. The next is equitable resource distribution. Now at the end when any state is demanding special category status, they want to ensure there is equitable resource distribution so that every state can develop the region. So over here we are talking about inclusive growth, holistic and sustainable development. You can also talk about that how instead of special category status, there is a committee by Raghuram Rajan which talked about multi-dimensional index for devolving fund to ensure that the funds are divided among different states based on their need. Again, this is an element of asymmetric federalism. So this is there for question number 3. Let's see the model answer and understand how can we inculcate the same in our answer writing practice. The first, you can talk about the context, you can talk about the recent current affair, how Bihar's caste-based census, the survey, gave us the insight that the 1/3 of the population is living in the poverty, and because of the same, Bihar government demanded special category status. You can talk about special category status, certain kind of information such as how there has been increased devolution of divisible pool for all state. In the 15th Finance Commission, we saw that it was 41% from the 32% before 14th Finance Commission. You can talk about the reasons for demand of special category status in the body heading 1. List down the reasons, give the example to justify and substantiate your arguments. Next, you can talk about the concern, and in the conclusion, you can talk about the way ahead with different kind of suggestive measures. So this is there for question number 3. You're writing for free daily mains answer writing program by Vajiram and Ravi. If you want to level up your game, mains intensive test series, which comprises of a 38 test, is a year-long test series where you can prepare the entire mains part in a holistic way. So keep writing. Thank you so much.